doesn't break us all at once. It wears us down slowly. A missed boundary here, a little overgiving there, until one day we wake up exhausted, burnt out, and wondering where do we stop mattering in our own lives? Listeners, welcome to the Mindful Living Podcast. I'm your host, Sana. And today's conversation is about reclaiming that space, about boundaries, burnout, and the long, courageous journey back to self worth. My guest knows this path intimately. So she's not just speaking from theory, but from lived experiences, navigating divorce, loss, burnout, and even a breast cancer diagnosis, all while raising two children as a single mother. Her resilience has turned into a calling, helping women rebuild after adversity, uncover suppressed feelings, and also step into a new chapter with clarity and confidence. So, if you have ever felt stuck, overwhelmed, or just lost in this juggle of giving too much and receiving too little, this episode is for you, listeners. So, listeners, meet my incredible guest, Nicole Adey. Nicole, welcome to the show, and I'm really honored to have you here with us.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you so much for having me. And hello to all your listeners.
Superb, superb. Nicole, I, one thing for sure, I mean, lots of trials and tribulations, but you kept showing up for yourself, for your kids as well, and I think that is something we all can seek a lot of inspiration from. So let's try to first understand about boundaries, because especially as women, uh, it's still the hardest thing to set, because we are kind of conditioned to be people pleasers, cater to everyone, always be available whenever asked for. And if we try to set up boundaries, it's sometimes interpreted that we are rude or selfish or have too much of attitude. So, uh, you know, uh, what made boundaries so essential in your experience, Nicole? And how do you explain their importance to someone who still sees them as selfish?
Boundaries were the most important thing in as part of my transformation, to be honest. And you mentioned people pleasing earlier. I have always been a people pleaser, a high achiever, chronic overthinker. So boundaries for me were always a challenge. And just like you described, I always felt guilty or
Mm.
that other people would think I was selfish. But what I've learned is that boundaries are the foundation of restoration and self compassion. And
Mm.
without solid, consistent boundaries, you are more likely to burn out and not be at your best self, which is obviously not good for you, but it's also not good for others. And I think one of the key things I've learnt in on my journey is by setting boundaries, it has actually been really, really worthwhile for everyone around me because
Mm.
it's meant that I've had more time, more energy, better
Mm.
clarity, and it's allowed me to really focus on aligning the activities that I do and the time I spend with people on what makes me happy, fulfilled, and in line with my personal values. So I feel that it gives you a lot more clarity and allows you to live in better alignment, which I think that's what we're all aiming for.
Absolutely. I, I totally agree with you. And I think this doesn't have to be agreed upon. It is something uh, that is, I think, very natural, and it's kind of heartbreaking that sometimes, especially women, we miss out on so much just because it could be because of conditioning or because of uh, how we are taught to handle things. Uh, do you believe, Nicole, that this is all about conditioning? This is all about kind of the stereotypes or the expectations, you know, as a woman, society has from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel that a lot of fear around setting boundaries is conditional, and a lot of it is also subconscious. So it's not until we stop and reflect, pause and really listen to our bodies. Sometimes we don't even realize that we don't want to do the things we're saying yes to because
Yeah.
it's automatic response. And we're all, a lot of us, we're juggling careers and families, you know, within daily lives. And a lot of what we do is reactive. And so many of us, and I did for many, many years, I was living in survival mode. So the most important thing I try and work with my clients on is really tuning into your body, pausing, listening, and if you're not feeling like you really want to do something, then that's an alarm. That's a red flag. And it just provides you the opportunity to rethink how you may approach the response to that situation. And I think that's the first step is becoming aware and recognizing when you may be tending to do something that you otherwise don't want to do. And I think the first step is just that awareness.
Yeah, of course, of course, of course. And I that is such a striking, point that you made, that sometimes we don't even realize that we say yes to things that we do not want to do. So yeah, that is absolutely important. Um, and 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 also I think I would also like to say about boundaries that it doesn't mean that we are shutting people out, but it's about protecting our energy. Um, because sometimes people would get confused. Uh, that boundaries is like avoidance. You're avoiding everyone. You're just focusing on yourself, and that's it. How someone can tell the difference in there, Nicole? How can someone communicate that I'm setting up this, or I'm doing this activity? These 15 minutes are my own time, and I would like to start my day with these 15 minutes dedicated to myself, and then the day is for all of us. How do we communicate or navigate through that?
Yeah, I think setting boundaries is obviously very important to protecting your own energy. But just to expand on what you said, I think it was really enlightening for me
Mhm.
that by setting boundaries, it actually opened up new opportunities for me and those around me. Because yes, I had more energy, but also I was able to make better decisions. And I think communicating that to loved ones as a starting point is really, really, really important. And I know for my children, being a single mum, obviously it's a bit challenging. The demands are quite high at times. But I do say to my children, mum's cup isn't full, it's running on empty. And just like a car, as an analogy, if it's running on empty, it's not going to go very far. It's not going to perform as well as if it had a full tank of fuel. So
Yeah.
I use that with my children, the cups analogy. And I think that's a really good one. It's communicating your needs and honoring your needs. Being aware of your needs and honoring your needs is not selfish, is absolutely the kindest thing you can do for yourself and others.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That's really, really, first of all, it's cute, it's practical, and it sounds simple, but yes, I think definitely um, the execution, it's sometimes a long way. And then that's where, Nicole, you help a lot of women out there. Now let's move to burnout. Oh my goodness. I mean, whenever, in so many of my conversations, I talk about burnout. My guests, they share their experiences. I can so much connect with that because this is something I've personally gone through. Maybe not to a huge extent affecting my physical or emotional mental well-being, but you know, you kind of lose a sense of your own self. You detach. You don't feel that joy in doing the activities that you feel like you used to do it before, or you get sometimes socially detached.
Mm.
And I mean, you just don't that have energy, and it's really a tough place to be in. I mean, people say that, oh my god, it's a buzzword, everybody is talking about burnout. It's not that simple. You just have to balance everything, but it's easier said than done. So what did burnout look like in your life, Nicole? And what signs should women listening be paying attention to before it gets that far?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. Like yourself, I have experienced burnout um, at least two or three different times in my life, but most recently, a couple of years ago. Recognizing the signs of burnout is absolutely key. And you mentioned that before. It's about feeling emotionally or physically exhausted,
Mm.
lack of motivation, difficulty in concentrating or making decisions, and just a general feeling of being disconnected. They're all signs that things are not in balance. Your energy levels are not in balance, and we need to move closer to an equilibrium. So for me, it was that constant survival mode. I was on autopilot. And there are large chunks of my life, a couple, 2, 3 years ago after my divorce and the loss of my dad, I was suppressing my emotions and feelings. I was juggling being a mum to two small children and working full time in a demanding corporate job, which required travel and night calls. And there were
Mhm.
just chunks of that period of my life that I don't remember. I was in such a haze,
Mm.
and I got to a stage where I really couldn't concentrate anymore. I was physically exhausted all of the time, and I knew that I needed to step away and take a break. And what I realize now, knowing more about the mind body connection,
Mhm.
that stress and that constant need to meet everyone else's needs before my own was definitely a contributor to my breast cancer diagnosis. And
Mm.
to the listeners out there, if I hadn't have stepped away from my corporate job to take a rest, I would never have had a mammogram because I would have always been too busy to. And without that mammogram, I would never have found out I had breast cancer and it was too late. So, listening to your body and taking the time to pause is critical. Don't leave it too late. There are so many things we can do, and I'm happy to talk through some steps that worked for me. And I work with my clients to work through those early signs of burnout before it does get too far down the track and turns to illness or disease.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's it's really it takes a lot of courage, Nicole, to share that. We all tend to share our wins, but you know, um, these conversations are meant not only to share your wins or achievements, but maybe the lowest, the darkest moments, the phases in your life, and how sometimes they really become so pivotal in kind of moving your journey to a different trajectory altogether. And I think that's the beauty of life. Our bodies, they are beautiful. They have mechanisms to send signals, those little signals or signs that you need to listen to me emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It's all connected, and that's why it's holistic. It's never just a single thing. So thank you for sharing that, Nicole. Definitely, we'll talk about how you now help guide other women to uh, kind of begin embark upon this journey of establishing a balance in there. Um, but before that, you know, let's also try to understand self worth. Um, but before that, Nicole, I don't know whether it's a valid question or not. It's just popped up in my mind. You mentioned that you completely got immersed in your work, and you didn't even realize, you were traveling. You didn't have any sense of anything else apart from work. Was it uh, to mask the emotional loss, uh, that shock, that grief, um, that you were going through? You were just trying to ignore those emotions.
Definitely, definitely. And I didn't realize it probably, to be honest, I'm still realizing it. I think it's a constant, um,
It is.
evolution, which, to your point earlier, the body, the mind's such a beautiful gift that we have if we take the time to listen and respect. But yes, I was throwing myself into work, keeping busy, you know, not setting boundaries, trying to please everyone because it just kept me going. And I think I was afraid that if I stopped, that I may just fall into a heap. So, yes, you're right. I feel that that was a big contributor. And I now realize for so long how, well, what the impact of the suppressed emotions and feelings and fears were having on my energy levels as well, because it's not just the present moment where we're consuming energy. If we have, say, 100 units of energy or life currency um, per day, a lot of that, most of it could be subconscious, but a lot of that is perhaps in the past, to your point, around conditioning. It was my divorce, the guilt, the fear that came from that. That was constantly on my mind, draining my energy. So there's units from the past and also the future because I feared, you know, about my children, how they're going, they're going to be in a broken family now, how my life is not going to look like how I wanted it to and expected it to. So I had sadness about that. And often people worry about money, finances, career. Um, so there's energy coming from the past being consumed as well as the future. And I think, as we move into talking about self worth, it's important to recognize that conditioning, the thoughts, and the impact that those thoughts and feelings are having on you day to day, and the importance of becoming aware, but also learning to recognize, process, and accept the things that you either can't change or you have no control over, because that will also lead to burnout and keep you in that spiral of self doubt, negative feelings, limiting beliefs, and patterns. So, yes, to answer your question, I completely wanted to keep busy to avoid having to face those feelings and emotions.
Mm. Thank you for answering that, Nicole. That means a lot. Okay. Now you mentioned about self-worth and how you guide other women out there. So you work with personal energy mapping, and it's fascinating. So if you can walk us through how reallocating energy away from past or future worries, it can actually help rebuild self-worth.
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned, when I started doing this work a couple of years ago, I didn't realize how much of my daily energy was being consumed by thoughts, negative thoughts, and feelings and emotions from my past. And some of that for a lot of your listeners might be childhood trauma, conditioning, events that have happened in the past. It could be, divorce, loss, different types of grief, etc., separation, illness. And that does move with us to the present day. Now, if we look at 100 units of energy, which is the model that I use, at one point in time when I did an audit, I was estimating that 20 to 30 units of my daily energy levels were actually connected to the past. So that guilt, that fear that I had, some of that childhood conditioning about people pleasing and high achieving, that was feeding into the present day. And I needed to, number one, become aware of it and then start processing what that looked like in my life, where it was coming from, how it was still playing a part in my day to day. And a lot of people try different methods, but for me, journaling was a really important first step. So just writing out the feelings, being present with myself, listening to my body. I did a lot of crying, and that started to help. And it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen within a month. But if you think of just lots of thin layers, and if it's just peeling back one or two layers at a time, those units are going to come back into your present day of energy. And similarly with the future, we can't control what's going to happen in the future. So, what I work with my clients on is really trying to control their thoughts and maintain a positive mindset. So, with negative thoughts, I encourage them to challenge those thoughts and reframe those thoughts into something more positive or realistic because, we can be consumed by thoughts and they're not real. So, they can have a big impact on our lives. And I feel women tend to overthink a lot because we're juggling lots of different things day to day. And we do try and manage everything and we do keep ourselves responsible and try and do everything right by everyone, but it's to our own detriment. And the cycle is that once we start burning out, it impacts everyone else. So it's actually not a very good cycle to get into. So, one of the key steps I work with my clients is really prioritizing rest and recharge to reset. And really, and it has to be a priority. We have to commit. Change won't happen unless we commit. And so by committing, it may look like scheduling it into your day. And even if it's 5 minutes a day, where you may just go outside with a cup of tea, close your eyes, take some nice deep breaths, and then go back to your day. It could be a walk. It may just be unplugging from technology for a period of time. All of those things will help you to reset and recharge. We've talked about boundaries, and boundaries, obviously, I think, are one of the most important things towards self worth. And setting boundaries can feel very overwhelming and daunting. So I encourage everyone to start small. And the first boundary could be to do with yourself. For example, my boundary is that every lunchtime or every morning, I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk. That's my boundary. That's it. It doesn't have to even relate to anyone else. But by setting a boundary and sticking to it, then it builds confidence. And once you start feeling the benefits and the joy that come from it, then that positive mindset kicks in and you feel confident to do it again and again. So, with boundaries, again, like everything, just one small step at a time and see what works for you.
Yeah, totally, totally. I really love that because uh, it it really makes the invisible visible. Um, and Nicole, I would also like to ask. Uh, you mentioned that it's kind of uh, very natural, like it's how we women are Women are. I mean, we tend to overthink, especially when, it comes to relationships, heartbreaks, loss. We are, we carried that forward. It's not very easy to go ahead, move forward, just leave everything and that's it. Do not even think about it. And sometimes I really find it very annoying that, people would react maybe adversely to it. You overthink a lot. Why do you overthink? It makes everything problematic. It's like uh, I'm getting gaslit by them just because it's something natural. How do you suggest that uh, we can navigate these kind of situations? Because sometimes um, these um, comments or these observations, yeah, maybe wrong, they really affect our self worth.
I think the most important thing to realize is that the relationship you have with yourself should always be first and foremost, and it is the most important relationship you're ever going to have.
Mm-hmm.
You are worthy and you are responsible for you. So if you are in a relationship that's broken or you feel that there's some gaslighting, etc., I I feel that from my experience and the the experiences I've had with my clients is to reflect on where those feelings are coming from because usually it's an unmet need within yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And often people talk about the mirror and the reflection in the mirror. So if someone or you feel that someone is doing something to you or making you feel a particular way, you need to flip it and ask yourself, why am I letting myself feel this way?
Hmm.
And I feel that when you do that and it just changes the lens slightly, and I feel that it begins that self-awareness because certainly with difficult relationships or separations and divorce, from my own experience and working with clients, there's often an underlying reason for the feelings and emotions as well. And often being aware of those and starting to work through those is such an important part of that self-worth journey.
Wow. Ah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, Nicole. I think that is, first of all, very comforting, and I think it's very practical way to look at this. Um, Great. Before we wrap up, um, as a single mother, you have lived the constant juggle firsthand, Nicole. So, do you believe women can truly have it all without burning out, or is that phrase itself setting us up for failure?
That's really interesting. I think about this a lot actually, and I feel that the definition of having it all has changed for me, and I would challenge listeners to really redefine what success and having it all looks like for them. Because I used to think it was the career and the fancy title and the good salary and, my kids being in new clothes and all of those driving a nice car and things like that.
Mhm.
Now I realize that that's not making me happy or success at all and having it all. Having it all in my mind now is living in alignment with your values and what you cherish. And if you can be honest and true with yourself and every day wake up with that in mind and that being your focus, then I think we are, we can have it all. Absolutely. But we really need to identify what having it all really means and going back to our core values and what really fulfills us deep down. Go within, not external. Take a moment, write it down. What really excites me? And if you can incorporate some of that into your life, then I think that everyone's doing pretty well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I definitely agree with you, Nicole, and that's really beautiful. And also, if our listeners they would like to connect with you, what would be the easiest way?
My website, www.achangeofseasons.com.au. On there, you'll find some really great resources which are free to download, and they're step by step guides to help you get started on protecting your energy, setting boundaries, personal goals, journaling, etc. So jump onto my website, and I also invite listeners to a free complimentary 30-minute discovery call where we can get started on some of these things that we discussed today.
Super, super. I'll make sure to add all the links and details in the show notes for all of you listeners. And I think what I really really realize from today's conversation is that boundaries aren't walls; they are bridges back to ourselves. Burnout isn't weakness; it is a signal. It's a sign that something deeply important has been ignored. And of course, self worth, it isn't something we earn, it is something we remember. So, Nicole, thank you. Thank you so much for guiding us through this path of self awareness and self realization, and sharing your lived experiences with all of us, answering some of the tough questions out there. So, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sana. Thank you for having me.
And to all the listeners, thank you. Thank you so much for joining on this episode of the Mindful Living podcast. Until next time, take a breath, honor your limits, and give yourself permission to matter. Until then, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.